Hello and welcome you all to JKSC online platform. And here we are doing revision lectures for CA Inter November 2021. And in this series, now we are taking chapter number 2 of EIS. As we are doing chapter 1, similarly in this chapter also, we would be covering all the major concepts of this chapter. We'll be taking the grasp of each and every concept and we'll move further, and I'll let you know which questions were there in July and which are the probable questions which can come in the upcoming attempts. So let us begin with our session. So the first topic which I'm taking is the third question, the third topic in our book. In the classroom lectures, we have discussed everything in detail. So this is just a revisionary lecture. So we'll be taking all the basics of every question. The first point. There are two types of data in a financial and accounting system, as you all know. One is master data and one is non-master data. And you should know the difference between both of them. Now, what is master data, sir, and what is non-master data? Master data is that data which is a permanent data, while the non-master or the transaction data is a non-permanent data. Master data, since it is permanent, doesn't change frequently. Non-master changes frequently. Master data is not typed by the user of the organization. It is set up, it is created by the database admin. And whenever you are posting some transaction, whenever you are posting something, you have to select this master from the available list of masters. Whereas in case of a non-master data, like a transaction data, sales transaction, purchase transaction, the amount cannot be same for every transaction. The date cannot be same for every transaction. So that is a non-master data. That non-master data needs to be typed by the user of the organization. So there are two kinds of mainly data. One is master one. And if you have seen chapter 1 revisional lecture, we have discussed that master is something which doesn't change frequently. Master example can be, it can be vendor master. It can be customer's master if you are selling something. If you are having some employees and you have to pay them the salary, the name of the employee, the designation of the employee, the salary details will come in the employee master. There is a statutory master also, wherein you have to book all the tax rates, tax slabs, GST rates, because it doesn't change frequently. So master data and non-master data are two kinds of data in a financial and accounting system. Master, it's a permanent one, isn't expected to change frequently, created by database admin and not typed by the user, and the master data is always selected from the list of masters to maintain that standardization across the organization. Examples: accounting, inventory, payroll. I have just told you employee master, it's equivalent to payroll master. Statutory master, relating to statutory laws. Non-master changes frequently, not a permanent one, typed by the user and not selected from the available list, right? Because the amount in each transaction will not be the same every time. It will change in every transaction. It may change in every transaction. So this is two types of data in a particular accounting and financial system. Now coming on to this fourth one, voucher. Voucher is an evidence. Types of voucher, they're all simple versions. You have to read it. We are not covering in this lecture. Qualities of voucher number, it should be serially numbered, prefix, suffix should be there, chronology should be there. So this is all simple version. Now sixth is also simple, but I'll just tell you one thing. If the question in the exam comes that explain the accounting flow from the angle of software, your answer would be this one. If the question is asking you from the angle of software, your answer is this one. And one more question is there when we'll be reading the accounting cycle, accounting flow. If the question doesn't say from the angle of software, the answer is a separate one. Here, from the angle of software, if they ask, two transactions are from the point of view of humans, and thereafter the software takes up. So there are 7 stages, 7 flows, 2 human flows, rest are in the software. Whereas in that question, which we'll be discussing in this chapter only later on, the source document, the journals, the ledgers, the trial balance, the adjustments, closing entries, those are the normal accounting flows. So do remember this thing. Otherwise, this question is pretty simple. Will not be going in the detail. Ledgers are also very simple. There are two types of ledger. Ledgers having debit balances, ledger having credit balances. You have to take into account. Again, this is again a simple question, but I'll just let you know front-end and back-end module of any software. Any software which is working in your computer is having two modules, generally two modules, the front-end module and the back-end module. Now, what does front-end module does and what does back-end module does? Front-end module's work is to interact with the user of the person who is using that software. To get interaction with him is the work of front-end module. And back-end module basically interacts with the front-end module and does all the processing work in the background. Now, we need to have a separate front-end and separate back-end, because the language spoken by the back-end will not be easily understood by the users. So you need a front-end who can present, who can display, who can communicate with the user clearly and specifically. Otherwise, back-end doesn't have that capability that it can directly interact with the consumer or to the user. So we need a separate front-end or a separate back-end in our software so that the work gets smooth and the users doesn't get any problem while delivering or while asking for any information. Similarly, one more question is there. Installed application versus web application, or in fact we can say cloud application. Let us come on to the difference between the two. Let us first get the concept that what is installed application and what is this cloud-based or web-based application. Whenever you want to run any software, you all must know that either you can download that software, run that software, install that software on your PC, and then you can process whatever you want to do. In the cloud-based or web-based application, there is no need to install that software on your PC. You can just log in to the cloud, log into the website, and then you can do whatever work you have to do and then come back and download that particular work from that cloud. So in the installed application, that particular software is installed where? On our computer. Whereas in the cloud applications or the web application, that software need not be installed on our computer. It is there at the web server. It is there with the cloud service provider. So what are the differences between the two? So let me explain one by one with the basis. First of all, installation and maintenance. It's a clear topic, sir. If it is an installed application, it will be installed on our computer, on every computer with that, on every computer. If there are 10 computers in our organization and all the 10 computers need to use that particular software, all of them need to install it on their computer. And so maintenance and updation will also take time because it will be done on all the 10 computers, right? In the cloud-based, since installation is not on our computer, so maintenance, updations, any upgrades, any maintenance in that software is the responsibility of the service provider and not the user. Fine. The second one, accessibility. Now, what is accessibility? Since it is installed on the computer's memory, so user can access only through that computer in which that software is installed, right? Whereas in the cloud-based application, the user can access it from anywhere in the world. It is accessible 24/7. Comfortable, sir. Mobile application. Now, using the installed application, installed software, using this mobile application is very difficult. Whereas, as I said, in the cloud, mobile application becomes very easy as data is available 24/7. So you can easily access it from even a mobile application, right? The next one, data storage. In the installed application, the entire data is stored on the hard disk only. So users have full control over the data. Whereas in the cloud application, the data is stored on the server computer. That is stored on the server. So ownership of data is generally defined under a service level agreement. You would have studied in chapter 4 that whenever we take services from the cloud vendors, we enter into a service level agreement so that the ownership of data can be or responsibilities can be clearly defined. The next one is again based on the above point. Data security. Since in the installed application, the entire data is on the computer and our own computer, so user have full physical control over the data, right? Whereas data security is a big challenge. It's a big challenge in the cloud computing because the data is kept with the service provider. The next point says performance. If an installed application is there, we need not depend upon the internet services, right? Because the data is there in the computer itself. The data is being picked from the local server itself. So the performance would be faster. But in the cloud or web applications, since we are dependent upon the internet and a slow internet access to that information may slow our operations. So performance may deteriorate in that point. So these were all the what? Differences. These were all the basis of differences and very comfortable differences. First was installation and maintenance. Then was regarding data security, data storage. Can it be accessed from anywhere? Can it be accessed from mobile application? And the performance would be, obviously, it would be higher for a installed application. So this was the second concept for the day. What is installed and what is the web application or cloud application? Fine. Now let's move on to the big giant topic of this chapter, which is integrated and non-integrated system. Non-integrated, it's a simple logic that the data is maintained in a decentralized manner. Every department, be it the marketing, be it the production, purchase, logistics, HR, any department, quality control, any department, they're all maintaining their own data in their own system. They're not integrated. But in today's scenario, this will not work much. So the integration of all this data has arisen, and that concept is known as ERP. So we're beginning ERP, a big topic of this chapter, the major topic of this chapter. Let us begin with it. So first of all, let me explain you what is ERP. Sir, what is ERP? Earlier, as I said, the data was maintained in a decentralized manner. The purchase department was maintaining his own his own data on his own local server. The sales department was maintaining her own data on his local server. So there was a problem of coordination. There was a communication gap. There was a mismatch. The need arisen that there should be a system which integrates all these departments, all these functions of the organization, all these core businesses of the organization. And the need was solved by this integrated version of the system, which is known as Enterprise Resource Planning, ERP system. What is this ERP, sir? ERP has done what? It has fully integrated every core business and every core process of the organization. And it promises that this entire organization, having several departments, are all integrated into one common database. They're all integrated with one common application. They're all integrated with one common user interface. So the ERP promises one user interface only. So every user interacting with that application will interact in the similar manner. There will be one integrated database, common database, so that the information can be shared among several users. The common information can be shared among several users, so there's no mismatch of data. There will be only one application, that would be the ERP application, through which the user will access the data. So that is all about ERP. So what is ERP, sir? Let me merge 2 points, 2 definitions. The first one, ERP is a fully integrated business management system, right, sir? It has integrated our entire business management system that integrates the core businesses and the processes. And why this is done? Let us go to the second one. It's a multi-module software system, because purchase, sales, these all will be called modules now. These all will be called as a part of the software now. The small modules are joined together to make a bigger module. So it's a multi-modular software system that has integrated all the processes and functions of the enterprise into a single software using a single integrated database. So you can join and you can make a single definition that ERP is a fully integrated business management system having multiple modules that has integrated all the business process and function of the enterprise into a single software using a common or a single integrated database, that is known as ERP. Right? So this was ERP. Now the first question in ERP has basically 3 plus 1 modular question. The 3 questions initially we'll be discussing is advantages, risk or issues, and how to audit this thing. How to audit ERP. As an auditor, how you're going to audit the ERP. So 3 basic questions we'll be discussing, and the 4th one will be again a giant one, which will be covering the modules of the ERP. So let us start with this question. What is the advantage of using this ERP system? And again, there's no need to cram anything. Everything is based on certain logics. If you can go with that logic, you can easily grab all the points. The first one. Don't cram. Just think, what is ERP? What is ERP, sir? ERP is an integrated system, right? It has integrated all the processes. Fine. So the first benefit of ERP is information integration. It has integrated the entire databases and created a common database. So this is the first advantage, information integration. Now, due to this, what has happened is something has improved and some negative things have reduced because we have asked benefits. So some improvement has taken place in some areas and some bad areas, some cost areas were reduced. So let us first talk about reduction points. Reduction points. So what has happened is we have taken this as number 1. We'll take this as number 2. Sir, what has happened is the lead time has reduced. You all must be knowing lead time. Lead time is the time at which you have placed the order and the time when you have received that raw material from the supplier is the lead time. Now, since ERP's nature is integrated, it has integrated several modules which are required for the purchases like finance, manufacturing, material management. Also, the payments are being done online. The data is exchanged electronically. So, this has reduced the time taken to place the order and the time to receive the order. That lead time has reduced. So, this is the second advantage. This was from the angle of supplier or from the angle of purchase of the organization. Let us talk about from the angle of sales. The sales side says the cycle time has also reduced, sir. Cycle time is the time when which you got the order, the time at which you got the order and the time you delivered the product. That time will also reduce again because again due to integration of all the modules, every process is automated. There is no human intervention. So the cycle time has also reduced. The time at which you receive the order and the time you are going to deliver the product, that time has also reduced due to this ERP, due to this common integration. And since the cycle time has reduced, you can just go with the flow. Sir, since the cycle time has reduced, we are able to timely ship our product and timely deliver our product because all the modules which are required for delivery of the product, like your sales and distribution, your production planning, your plant maintenance, they're all integrated. All the procedures are automated. There is no human intervention. So chances of errors are by default minimum and the efficiency is by default high. So on-time shipment will continue. And there is one more reduction point which I'll take first. Reduction, because we are taking from the angle of reduction. So it has reduced the quality cost also. Earlier what used to happen was there used to be a different non-integrated databases. So there could be some redundant data in it. There was no standard procedure to maintain that data. But now, because of that central database, the redundant specifications have been eliminated. There are standard procedures that whenever you make a change at a particular place, it will apply to all the places. So the work has become more excellent. Everyone is conforming to certain specification. The data is fit for use. The data is valuable. And this reduces the quality cost that otherwise would have been incurred to remove all these redundant specification. So it has reduced the quality cost. So are you cramming the point? No kids, you're not cramming the point. You're just logically arranging them. So the first one was, sir, ERP does what? Sir, it integrates the information because the logic of ERP is fully integrated system. Due to which your lead time has reduced, due to which your cycle time has reduced. And since the cycle time has been reduced, you can deliver the product on time. So on-time shipment is there. And your quality cost has reduced. Now this was our reduction. Now comes to what has improved in the organization. What has improved in the organization? Sir, resource utilization has improved. Again, the reason is the same. Since your all modules are properly integrated, you need not keep much inventory in your stock. Inventory can be kept at a minimum level. The machine efficiency will be high. The downtime will be less. The goods will be produced only when demanded. Finished goods would be delivered on time. So this improves your resource utilization. There would be no wastage of resources. There would be no carrying cost. So that is resource utilization has improved. Now since resource utilization has improved, you can deliver better value to your customers because the cycle time has reduced, because on-time shipment was there. So better customer satisfaction. The customers are satisfied. So point number, we can take this as 6. Sir, our customers are satisfied. Again, customer satisfaction, how? The customers can place the orders online. They can pay online. They can track the status of the order because all your departments are integrated. The technical support team can deliver quite well customer services. So this is led to better customer satisfaction. And from the angle of supplier also, we have better supplier performance, improved supplier performance. How, sir? Again, the same logic. We can negotiate with them. We can check, monitor whatever they are doing. You can manage the relationship with them. You can manage the quality of the product. You can get an assurance that superior quality is being delivered to you. So it has improved supplier angle also. It has improved supplier performance also. And since everything has improved, I'll take this point first. It has increased the accuracy of information and thereby has improved the decision making capability. Because what a decision maker needs is an accurate information, relevant information, timely information. And this ERP, because of the integration of all the modules, because of a common integrated database, ensures that you get an information accurate, you get the information relevant, you get the information on time. And thereby it has improved your decision making capability. And the last one, I think I'm numbered wrongly. There was 10 points there. So we'll be taking this one now, next one, increased flexibility. Now what is increased flexibility, sir? What is this increased flexibility? Increased flexibility means what? Again, as I said, since all the departments have coordinated, you have a common integrated database. Earlier, in the non-integrated version, there was a separate data and nobody knew what the data of the other department says. Now, since now the data is available across the department, so the barriers have been removed. Everything has been automated. So the decision makers can easily take a decision that whenever the market conditions are changing, whenever the environment is changing, they can take a decision and react quickly. So this ERP has made the organization quite flexible to the changing market condition, to the changing environment which is happening. And this is one more point here. So these are what benefits of ERP. What are the benefits of ERP? Think logically, sir, information integration, the one. Next was reduction of lead time, reduction of cycle time, reduction of cost, and due to the cycle time, on-time shipment was possible. 5 points, done. Improvement side, so it has improved resource utilization, it has improved customer satisfaction, it has improved supplier performance, it has improved decision-making capability, and it has improved the flexibility of the organization. Is that not easy? It is. And this is a good question which can come in the upcoming attempts. So this was benefits of ERP. Now talking about risks and issues. There are 5 kinds of issues. One is people issue, one is process issue, one is technological issue which was there in July 2021 paper. One is other implementation issues and one is post-implementation issues. There are total 5 kinds of issues in ERP. Let us go one by one. The important ones are people, technological, and other implementation issues. The process issues having only minimum points, 2 points, so it's difficult that could be asked. And the post-implementation has only 1 point. But yes, we will brush them up so that in MCQ you can easily attend. First of all, let me talk about people issue in the ERP. People issue. Again, do not cram. Just think over it. Just think logically. And I'll just share the logic with you, how you can easily remember this question. The question is people issue. Now, when people issues there would be certain people there? Yes, sir. So let me take one by one of people at a time. I'm taking the first person, which is top management. One guy, one people is top management. Now, what is the risk associated with top management? Sir, if the top management does not support, if the top management doesn't grant the permission for the utilization of resources that are required during the transition phase, when you're implementing the ERP, when you're moving ahead, you're non-integrated into an integrated version, you're converting or transforming your non-integrated system into an integrated version, you need top management's full support, that they grant you the permission to utilize whatever amount, whatever resources you need to transit. But the risk is that if they do not support, the ERP will fail. So there should be a control like this, that unless and until the top management is fully convinced, unless and until they assure you that they will be providing full support, you should not start with the ERP implementation. This is the control part. So this is one person. People issue consists of the second person, who is the consultant. Now what issue is here? So the issue is here, now who are consultants? Consultants are the experts who are going to implement this ERP package, right? Now what is the issue is? The issue is they're not familiar with the internal working of the organization. They're not familiar with the organization's culture. So they may not implement in a manner the organization culture or inner working requires them to do so. So what should be the control here, sir? The control here is very simple. Appoint a senior manager of the organization as a liaising officer who can liaison with the consultant, who can tell the consultant, this is how our internal working goes, this is our culture, so that the consultant behaves accordingly. So this is the second person. Now who is the third person, sir? Our staff is the third person. Staff is the third person. Yes, absolutely clear. So we have taken three people, right? Top management is one guy, consultant is another guy, and staff is another guy, because we are talking about people issue. Now what in staff turnover, what is the issue here? What is the risk here? Since ERP is not that simple to implement, and slowly and gradually when it gets implemented, it becomes more complicated, more difficult to understand. So there is a possibility that the employees start leaving the organization. The qualified and skilled personnel starts leaving the organization during that transition phase, during that implementation phase. And if that happens, if the employees turnover is there, staff turnover is there, it will affect the time schedule, it will delay the implementation, and it will cost the organization. So what should be the control for this? The control can be just fix the compensation packages accordingly. Pay high salary to them because they're working hard to implement this ERP. Allocate only those work to them which match their skill set. Do not overburden them. So staff turnover thereafter would be less. So this is the control. Now once we are talking about staff turnover, let's talk about staff training. Yes, staff needs to be trained. And if you're, again, this is from the point of view of staff. Okay, so this is again from the point of view of staff and the users. Staff needs training. Now the issue is what, sir? What is the issue in this training, sir? The issue is this, that since the greater part of the training takes place at the end, in the implementation cycle of ERP, this training stage is the end stage. Now till training stage, almost a good amount, a good cost would have been incurred. And generally it says that the work goes over budget in the ERP. Now, since training is at the last stage, it is at the last version, it's the last cycle, the management may curtail the training because the management is thinking that budget has increased, so let us curtail some training cost. No, that can be quite risky. So the control is training should be a part and parcel of the ERP. And it should be implemented or imparted by whom? By the consultant or by the representative of the package, hardware package, from whom which we have purchased the hardware package, the software package of this ERP. They and their representative should provide training, and that is utmost essential. That is utmost importance. You cannot skip that. And one more, again a logical point. Think, when this all is going to happen, changes will definitely take place in the organization. Some jobs could be eliminated, some new jobs will be created. The way in which the organization function will change, their planning, their decision making, everything will change. So you need to manage that change also. If you are not able to manage that change, you will not be able to do what? Will not be able to properly do your work. Now these changes needs to be managed. Now how these changes needs to be managed, you need to think accordingly. So let's see the change point. There are basically 3 points. I am covering just 2 right now. The first one is the change will occur in the employee's profile. As I said, some jobs will become irrelevant. Some jobs will be newly created. Another thing that I said is the way the organization function will change. The entire structure will change. So you need to have proper control. Like some jobs when becoming irrelevant, some jobs becoming created, you should train the user with a proper manual. Since the organization function will change, there should be a project charter or a mission statement should exist. That this is the changes which are going to happen, and everyone should accept those changes. Everyone should approve that changes. Yes, we are ready to accept these changes. And thereafter, this ERP should be implemented. So these are 5 issues which are known as people issue. Now people issues are again logical point. No need to cram, sir. People, worst person is top management. He is not supporting. There would be a risk. Consultant is not aware about the organization's culture or the internal working. There is the risk. Staff turnover is higher. There is the risk. Staff training gets curtailed. There is the risk. And changes needs to be managed properly. Otherwise, there will be a big chaos in the organization. These are what? These are people issue there. So these were people issue. Let us move ahead and talk about process risk, process issue. Now, it has only 2 points, so I'm not going into the detail of the same. I'll just brush up with the points. Since the topic is again process risk, so one is this ERP process needs re-engineering. It is not just a change which you are going to happen. It is a drastic change. It's a dramatic change. It would be a dramatic improvement that is going to happen, right? Right, sir. So that doesn't need only just filling or just repairing something. No. It requires overhauling of the entire structure. Of all the job descriptions, the trainings and the usage of IT is entirely changed. So you can not just change. You have to change substantially. You have to make an overhauling or a restructuring of the entire structure. So that is one risk, that people think that this is just a change, a small change will occur and ERP will be implemented. No, that is a process risk. And the second process risk is program management. There is a big possibility that there could be a gap between the day-to-day management activities and the ERP enabled function. So you should try to have a real-time link between the traditional functions and the ERP based functions, so that real-time linkages will enable, yes, high quality information is available for decision making. So these are 2 processes issue. Technological risk was asked in this July 21 attempt. So I'm just again brushing it up, not going into the detail of the same. Technological risk. What is technological risk? If you remember in chapter 1 number 1 also there was a technological risk topic of BPA. So this is similar logic. What is the technological risk in ERP? 1, technology gets obsolete, right? 2, you need to enhance and upgrade. 3, you need to focus on new applications and add it into the portfolio. And 4, since ERP is having so many number of features and function, all of them are not important for the organization. So select only those functions, only those features which you might need in the future, only those. Just for the sake of implementing all the features, that could be disastrous for the organization. So these were 4 technological risks in the ERP which was there in this attempt. The next risk is other implementation risk or other implementation issues. Now this is again a good question. What is other implementation issues, sir? Listen. Let's suppose you are the one who wants to apply ERP. Now what could be the implementation issues with you? The first implementation issues, you will say, sir, we don't have funding, sufficient funding. How we will implement this? Now think, the risk is here is, without consulting someone, without consulting some expert or consultant, you started your ERP. Now the issue would be that implementation would be stopped along the way because the funds would be lacked. Due to lack of fund, you'll have to stop that implementation. So the control here is consult with some expert, have a proper budget for this ERP. Along with that, have some budget for contingency also, because there is always a chance that the budget will get over and you need to get something for contingency areas. So first is insufficient funding. Okay, because budget is allocated without consulting expert and then the implementation stopped in between. That could be huge cost for the organization. That would be a huge disaster for the organization if the implementation stopped in between. So one is insufficient funding. The second implementation is the safety of data. Safety is important because the data is maintained at a central level, at a one common integrated database. So if that particular data is lost, that integrated database is lost, whole business can become standstill. Similarly, there is a chance that the data can be accessed by an unauthorized person. Similarly, there is a chance because every system is connected to the central database, and in case that particular database fails, the whole business can come to a standstill. And also the speed is another issue. Since the data is maintained centrally, gradually the data size will increase. And the more the data is there in the database, automatically it will reduce the performance, it will reduce the speed of the operation. Was there a need to learn this, or what is the need to cram this? So it can be thought logically. Now think, as a common man, what would be your issues in implementation? Sir, I don't have funds. I have funds, but I think my data would not be safe. Why this would not be safe? Because some access could be there, unauthorized access could be there, and due to which that my system could fail. And that is why my speed of the operations can reduce. So this is quite logical. Yes, these are implementation issues. A common man thinks of this. There is insufficient funding. There's a problem of safety because unauthorized access can occur, and due to which the system can fail, and due to which the speed of operations can reduce. So these are the risk in other implementation issues. And post-implementation has a single risk that if you are implementing ERP, a lifelong commitment is required. Because ERP is not just that you implement and go away. No. There will be always new modules to be introduced. There will be new versions of ERP. New persons needs to be trained. New technologies need to be adapted. So you cannot just run away after implementing. ERP requires a lifetime commitment and consistency of the management and the users. So this is one risk, that if you do not commit after the implementation, again there could be a bit risk. So these were what? These were issues in the ERP. So we discussed benefit of ERP. We have discussed issues of ERP. Let us move ahead. Role-based access control generally is known to everyone that the person should be allowed to access only those things which is necessary for performing their duties. And in short, we say this: need to know, need to do basis. The employees need to perform his duties, so that much access you can provide him, but not more than that, so that unauthorized access chances are reduced. So I'm not talking about detail about that topic. Now the third question, as I said, would be, as an auditor, how you are going to audit the ERP. So in this two aspects we'll cover. Two questions we'll be covering. One is this one, which is on your screen right now. That whenever you are doing the audit of ERP system, what questions you are going to ask the client. So one will be discussing this. This answer is there. And the second one will be, what we are going to discuss is auditing aspect in an ERP. What are the aspects to be covered in the ERP audit? So let me first come to this question. Again, think logically. Audit of ERP system, when you're doing the audit of ERP system, what are the questions you're going to ask? So these are the questions you are asking. What? Number one, easy question. Is this ERP process functioning as per the auditing standard, as per the accounting standards or not? Number one. Does this ERP meet the need for reporting? Whether it could be regulatory reporting or any organizational reporting. Let's suppose you need to file annual return with the ROC. So whether it is meeting that report, it is preparing that report, it is meeting the need for reporting or not. Whether this ERP system is protecting the confidentiality and integrity of the information. Whether it is protecting the organization from unauthorized access and use or not. Whether role-based access controls are being installed or not, implemented or not. Is the admin's duty, ERP admin's duty, clearly defined? Are the trails being maintained? Are the activities of the user are being monitored? Log is being there? Are the users being trained? Is the documentation current and complete? So these are all the questions which an auditor is going to ask during an ERP audit. Fine. Now coming on to the next point, which is auditing aspect in case of ERP. Now if the question asks you, what are the questions which an auditor has to ask during ERP audit, which we have discussed above. But this one is the one which says, what are the aspects to be covered? Aspects to be covered in the audit of ERP. So there are two aspects to be covered in the audit of ERP. One is auditing of data and another one is auditing of process. Now first, let me talk about auditing of data. When you're auditing the data, there are two only aspects to be seen. One is whether physical safety of data is being maintained and whether there is a logical safety. Logical safety means access control is being there or not, whether you have given the access on the basis of need to know, need to do basis. Second one is more important, auditing of process. In this, two types of audits are covered. One is functional audit and second one is audit of input validation. The first one, functional audit. Now what you're going to see in an ERP audit is whether the ERP is functioning as designed or not. That is, you will be testing different function, different features in that ERP system. You will test the overall process in that system and you will compare with the actual process. That the design of the ERP was supposed to work like this and the actual performance is like this. So you will be comparing, and in case of any deviations, you will be reporting. That is functional part. Name is also clear, functional audit. That means you are checking the function whether they are performing as designed or not. The second one in this auditing of process is the checking the input validations. Now whether the inputs in the system are being there as per the rules or not. So you'll be checking the rules for input of data into the system. Whether stock items are not filled empty. The stock item field can never be blank. It can be 0 but can never be blank. The date of a transaction should be the date for the day. It should not be backdated or future dated. So you need to check whether the rules for inputs are being followed or not in that ERP. So this is auditing of input validation. So there are two aspects in the ERP. One is auditing of data, one is auditing of process. Data has two coverage. One, the physical control, physical safety, the access control. And the auditing of process has two aspects. One is functional audit, another one is input validation. So this is all about ERP's conceptual clarity topics. So we are done with three topics in ERP. One is benefit of ERP. One is issues or risks in ERP. Third is how an auditor is going to do the audit, the questions he is going to ask, and what are the aspects he has to cover. Now, the next version in the ERP comes the modules of ERP, the various modules of ERP. And before covering those various modules, let me talk about some certain questions. There are two questions initially before we begin with the modules of ERP. One is this business process. I'm not talking about business process. It's a very simple point. Process is set of activities always. But here there is one simple question which can be asked is, what are the steps to manage a process? How are you going to manage a process? So management of process has three stages. The first one is define the steps in that process. Establish certain performance measurement so that you can find out whether that process is performed well or not. And the last one is, if that process is performing well, then make a standardization of it, make a final setup of it, and so that everyone can follow that particular process, adhere to that particular process. So this is how you are managing a business process. First is to define that process, the steps in those process. Second is to establish the performance measurement for those process. And third is to set up an organization structure for that process so that that process becomes standardized and everyone adheres to the same. This question, as I was talking in the initial 6th question, that from the angle of software, if the accounting cycle or accounting flow is asked, the answer was that. And if there's no such point, then the answer would be this. The answer is very simple. So not taking in detail, but just remember these things. Okay. Now covering the various types of modules in ERP. Now this topic becomes a nightmare for some of the students, but it will not be today. We're just brushing up and briefing up everything. And we'll try that how you're going to and what contents you need to collect from these topics. But do not skip these topics. These are also equally important. So we have various modules given. Finance, accounting, controlling, sales distribution, HR, production planning, material management, quality management, plant maintenance, project system, supply chain, and customer relationship module. And we'll try to cover each and every module in this lecture in a very brief and a logical manner. The first one, the financial accounting module. And the question asks you the features for the same. Now, this module is the base module because every module will impact on the financial part, accounting part, right? So this module is an important module and connects to all other modules. Okay. Now the features being asked here is, no need to leave this question. You can logically think this question. Listen, as I said, this module connects with every other module because every other module will have an impact on the finance and accounting part definitely. So the first point you can easily remember is this one. It integrates with every other module. Now, since it is financial and accounting module, asset accounting would be surely there. And we enter into the asset part, you will find account payable and account receivable, right? So account payable module is also there in this, and account receivable subhead is also there in this. And in the content part also, there's not much big deal. Account payable means, if you have learned the first chapter properly, the first chapter of EIS, account payable will always lead to creation of vendor master and related vendor details. And the account receivable module will always create the customer master and the customer related attributes in that. Perfect, sir. Perfect. So 4 points are definitely comfortable with us. The fifth one, this accounting module will obviously cover what? The general ledger. Creating the groups, accounts having debit balances, account having credit balances, creating the accounts in that is general ledger accounting. Apart from that, there are two more important points. I'm covering those also. Otherwise, the answer would have been okay with this also. You have got 5 points with you. But there are two more points above. You should know those 2 points so that you can write in other modules also the similar versions. These two are common in all. What, sir? Creation of organization structure. Whenever you use any accounting module or finance module, let's suppose you're using Tally. If someone has used Tally, you can see there you need to create a company there. The code is given to a company. The business areas are defined. The functional areas are defined. Credit limits are being set up. If there are multiple branches, multiple companies of the organization, of the group, a company code is assigned to every particular branch. So the logic is very simple. Creation of organizational structure is there, in which you have to define the company, you have to define the code of the company, you have to define the business areas, the functional areas, credit limit, credit controls, assigning the company codes to credit controls in case there are several companies, branches, etc. And one more thing you need to do is, in the financial accounting module, you need to track the flow of that particular data. Where from other department that particular data is flowing. So you need to track the flow also. So was that tough? Not at all, guys. Not at all. The features of accounting module, features of finance module, very easy to remember. The first one was integration with all other modules. The second was asset accounting. The third was account payable, account receivable. The fifth one was general ledger. The sixth was creation of organization structure, and the seventh was tracking the flow. So this is the feature of accounting module. Fine. Don't leave these questions. Do it once. Now in the controlling module also, let me just give you the hint or the logic how you should read this. Controlling module's function is to monitor, to control, to see whether the resources are being optimally used or not, right? Now controlling module has two major components. One is cost element and one is revenue element, guys. Controlling modules has two major elements. One is cost element and one is revenue element. Now think logically. These all points from here till here is based on cost elements. And these last two are based on revenue elements. The above ones are based on cost elements. Last two are based on revenue elements. If you are asked features, it's very easy. Now, revenue element, check 2 points first. profitability analysis, and profit center accounting. Fine. Profit centers, cost centers, you had heard about these words in the costing part. So profit center accounting, checking the profit or loss of an individual particular area, and profitability analysis. Similarly, in the costing part also, you can get the words or terminologies from the cost. One is cost element accounting, cost center accounting, activity-based costing is written activity-based accounting. Internal order is indirectly talking about job costing. It's talking about job costing, tracking the cost of a job, particular task, service costing. And one more is product cost controlling. Obviously, controlling module will ensure that the costs are being controlled. Fine. So this is an easy version. 2 points from revenue element. You have to just think that controlling module covers 2 elements. Cost element and the revenue element. Cost element and revenue element. Revenue element covers what? Profitability analysis, profit center accounting. Cost element covers cost center accounting, activity-based costing, cost element accounting, cost controlling, internal orders. It is like job costing, it's like service costing. So this is how you can go with the controlling module easily. In the sales and distribution module, I'll be talking about the sales and distribution process initially. Listen carefully. Again, I'm just clarifying something to you. That one sales cycle or order to cash cycle, commonly known as order to cash cycle, O2C cycle, you are done in chapter number 1. Wherein a customer order comes, you fulfill the order, you deliver, fine, invoice is being received, collection is being made, and accounting is being done. That was a cycle of order to cash. If the question comes, write order to cash cycle, which we discussed in the primary process, then it's fine. That answer is fine. But if the question says, write the sales and distribution process, and that too under sales and distribution module in the ERP, from the angle of ERP it is asking. So the answer would be a bit different, and this would be the answer. First, answer is simple, but you need to think logically. The first one, there would be pre-sales activities. Pre-sales activity means identifying the prospective customer, contacting him, showing him the demo of the product, submission of the quotation from our side. That is the pre-sales activity. Then the order will be received from the customer. We'll make the arrangement for the good, ensure that they are ready for delivery. Then the goods will be delivered, the billing would be done, and the money would be received from the customer. So the process is simple, but you need to remember that order to cash cycle and this sales and distribution process under the modules of ERP is different. Fine? Okay, sir. Now coming on to the HR module. Again, HR module doesn't have much content, but you should remember, for multiple choice at least, you should remember this topic. What is the objective of this module, or what is the objective of HR management? What is the objective of HR manager? A simple thing, a simple logical thing. HR manager's objective is to ensure that disputes should be very less in the organization, least to least disputes. Optimum utilization of manpower is done. The tracking of efficiency of employee, the tracking of the leave records of employees can be done. This is the primary objective of HR management. So this is very simple, not going into the detail of the same. The next question comes is production planning module and the elements in that module. Again, don't cram it because it would not be healthy for you. Just go with the logic. We have production planning modules, elements or features are being asked. So one, a production department first of all need to see what? Need to see whether the plant is having the capacity or not to produce that much which he is thinking. If the plant is having the capacity, then check out whether the material is available or not. Material requirement planning. If the material is there, then let's go with the production planning. Once you produce, do the sales and operational planning. After sales and operation, do the distribution planning. Fine. Fine. And everything needs to be incorporated in the master data. And the general point is whenever you are producing something, you need to plan for the cost also. So these are all the points which you can easily remember. A production department, first of all, need to check whether the capacity is there or not, the plant's capacity is there or not, whether there are any constant on that. Then plan for the material, then produce, then sales and operational planning need to be done, forecast the sales, distribution planning needs to be done, everything needs to be incorporated in the master data, and there should be product cost planning. Fine. This is how you can go with this topic also. There's no need to skip again, I'm saying. Then talking about material management module, I'll show the purchase process here, which is an important one. Now listen again. In chapter 1, purchase to pay or procure to pay, or commonly known as P2P cycle was there. And there the answer was, first of all, procure or purchase. Give a purchase order, that means goods received, thereafter invoice is being received, and thereafter you're going to make the payment in the first chapter. Here the question is asking purchase process again, but under material management module of ERP. So from the angle of ERP, the answer is a bit different. So remember what the question says. Answer is comparatively very logical, easy. The point is, first of all, you get a request from the production department. The purchase department gets a request from the production department. Production department needs raw material, so you request the purchase department to buy that raw material for him. The purchase department evaluates that request, compares that request with the current stock position, with any pending order, and decide whether that request should be accepted or rejected. Maybe the material is already in our stock. Maybe the material has already been ordered and it is in the pending position. So the request will be rejected that this material is already with us, we'll issue you soon. But if the material is not there, the request would be accepted by the purchase department. Then the purchase department will ask for quotations from the suppliers. The purchase department gets the quotation from different suppliers. They will evaluate the quotation and they will finalize one supplier and give him the purchase order. The supplier will send the goods, the material will be received by the organization, by the purchase department. The purchase department, once received the material, will send it to the production department, will issue to the production department the material. The purchase department will take the invoice from the supplier and the payment will be made to the supplier or the vendor. So this is how this particular process goes. Easy and simple, but logical. Okay. So request comes from production department. Production department request to the purchase department for some raw material. The purchase department evaluates that request. If found feasible, acceptable, then it asks quotations from the vendor suppliers, evaluate those quotations, give a purchase order, receive the material, issue the material once received to the production department, get an invoice, and then make the payment to the vendor. How this purchase process goes. The next one comes is the quality management module. In this again, you just need to focus on 4 points. These are the 4 subcomponents of quality management module. First, again logical, plan for the quality planning. Ensure that quality gets on a right track. Quality assurance should be there. And this is not a one-time task. Regularly improve it. So quality improvement. And if it is not improved, try to control. I'll just narrate you a brief of everything. What is quality planning, sir? We have planned something in advance. We have planned the production activity, that the goal should be achieved within time, within budget, within the available resources. That is quality planning. Quality control, sir. We need to maintain some proper standards for the goods manufactured. We need to randomly inspect everything. We need to check whether non-quality material, non-conforming material doesn't go to the consumer. Only the quality checked products are being sold to the consumers. That is quality control. Quality assurance ensures that some procedure, some quality procedure need to be applied to get that result. Document those procedures. Educate the people, educate the employees to implement those procedures. Prepare some SOPs, standard guidelines. Monitor regularly. Take actions if there are deviations. Continuously improve. This is quality assurance. And quality improvement again says it's not a one-time process. It's a regular process of changing your product your quality of product as per the needs and expectation of the consumers, maybe as per the competitive market, as per the economical situation. Do quality improvement regularly. So these are 4 subcomponents of quality management: planning, assurance, improvement, and control. And there's also one process given. You have to read it. It's a very simple process. That what is the quality management process? So the answer is very simple: setting some target, making some plan, how these targets will be measured. So some measurement need to be taken. Then measure that. If there are any issues, try to change those particular products or change the quality of the product, and then report on the overall quality. So this is a very simple process. You have to do it on your own. In the plant maintenance module also, now this is a separate module. Plant maintenance is having a separate module because the need for maintaining the plant is of utmost importance in the current scenario. You should try that your machine should break down as less as possible. The downtime becomes low. Machine should be in the working condition every time so that the optimum capacity can be utilized. Optimum return can be gained from that machine. I'll just narrate one question in this, which is, what is the basic objective of this plant maintenance? Not a typical one, but a very small question. What is the objective of this plant maintenance? Why maintenance of plant is necessary? Sir, so that the minimum breakdown can be there and we can keep the plant in a good working condition at a lower cost. So that our machines, our facilities works in such a manner so that we can use it at the optimum capacity without any interruption or hindrances. And third, to ensure that the machine becomes available, that particular asset becomes available for usage by other sections of the organization also, by other department also, ensuring optimum return on investments. So there are 3 basic objectives. One is minimum breakdown, so the plant can keep in the working condition always. Optimum capacity can be utilized, and even that plant can be available to other users also, so that optimum return on investments can be gained on it. This is 3 basic the objective of plant maintenance. Now, not going with the project module. Supply chain module, again, not to be covered in this. It is there, the logic is already there in the SM part, so not taking this. CRM also, one question will be taking, which is benefits of CRM. Now, what is CRM? So CRM means making some relationship with the customers, enriching certain relationship with the customers, interacting with the customers, properly guiding him. Means you're devoting your entire thing on the customer satisfaction. So what benefits this will have on you? What benefits this will have? 3 benefits, take it from the angle of customer. Again, logically think. 3 benefits from the angle of customer, 2 benefits from the angle of organization, that this customer relationship management, how it is benefiting. So 3 benefits from the angle of customer. For organization, from the angle of customer, so it will improve our customer's relationship with us. Customer would be satisfied because we are providing him services in a very systematic, organized manner. We are listening to their queries properly. We are giving them instant solutions, better solutions. So customer would be loyal towards us. So that will improve the customer's relationship with the organization, right? Right, sir. That will maximize your upselling and cross-selling. If you know upselling and cross-selling, upselling means what? Giving customers premium products. In the same category of their purchase, giving them the premium products, selling them the premium products. And cross-selling means offering them or giving them the complementary products based on their previous purchases. Give them some complementary product. So this will be increased because the customer is loyal towards you. And that will result in customers' revenue, increasing customer revenue. New set of customers will reach you. The existing one are already there. So this will increase the customer's revenue. So this 3 from the point of view of customer for the organization, directly from the point of view of customer. Improve customer relationship, maximize the selling to the customer, upselling and cross-selling, and that will increase the revenue, customer revenue. Now, two, from the angle of organization towards customer. The fourth one is better internal communication. Now, since the customer data is there in the central database in the ERP, so sharing of data between all the departments would be easy, quite easy. And now the departmental organizations would work as a team now. Earlier, what used to happen was every department had kept their own separate data regarding customer. So the other department didn't knew what the other department had an interaction with the customer. So the customer was sometimes confused. In this case, nowadays, since CRM is there and ERP is there, it is a module of ERP only, CRM. So due to the centralized database, the sharing of data between the department will become easy, and that will enable the departmental organization to work as a team. Rather than functioning as an isolated entity, they'll work as a team. And they will communicate better. Internal communication would be better amongst them, and they will deliver better value to the customer. Also, one more angle, the one more benefit of the CRM, optimizing marketing. Now, what is the logic here? Sir, since we have understood the customer's needs and behavior, we have seen that what websites he is being going through, what products he is being checking through from the websites. So after understanding the customer's needs and behavior, we can just hit him at the right time. We can make our product market at the right time to the customer. This CRM will help us to identify the most profitable groups also. That these are more profitable groups, we should market our more capabilities, more resources on these types of groups rather than on the less profitable groups. So your marketing strategy has been optimized. Wastage of resources becomes less in this case. Time wastages becomes less in this case. So these are what advantages or benefits of CRM. What are the benefits of customer relationship management module? The first benefit was, sir, this has improved our customers' relationship with us, customers' loyalty towards us. That will lead to maximizing the selling, whether it be upselling or the cross-selling, and that will increase the customer's revenue. Internal communication has become better, and our marketing strategies have become optimized. Now we can allocate proper resources to proper groups or customers. This is CRM. And here we end with the modules. But there are two more questions. One is the important points of integration of modules. Now this is a very genuine question. That whenever modules are being implemented in an ERP, because ERP is having a modular structure. So whenever these modules are being created, when these modules are being integrated, what are the points the designer needs to take care of? The first point, the one who is designing this ERP or consultant, he needs to check, one, the master data amongst all the module must be same. And you will agree that the master data cannot be different for different types of modules. The master data has to remain the same. And that master data must be shared with other modules whenever required by other modules. Fine. Some common transaction data should also be shared with other modules. Voucher type should be separate for every module so that you can easily identify. And since figures and transaction flow across the department, like closing stock quantity is required by purchase department also. It is required by your accounts department also for bookkeeping. It is required by stores department also, production department also. So the system needs to be designed accordingly. The designer needs to check this particular item needs attention of these departments. So I need to integrate that particular department in a manner that the flow of transaction goes with along with all these departments. The closing stock quantity goes is accessed by all these departments. So there are 4 basic points you need to remember. The designer needs to remember when he's designing this integration, when this setting this integration among the various modules. The master data has to be common and it's to be shared by all the modules. Transaction data needs to be common and shared with other modules. There should be separate voucher type for each module, and figures and transaction may flow across the department, so it is necessary to design and implement the system accordingly. Fine. So these were some important points which need to be considered while integration. And the next one, the next question says, points of integration. The topic is points of integration, where interaction with other module is required. Not to cram this again. You can easily remember with the logic. Remember. One, remember FICO, that is finance and controlling module. And one you remember is the material management MM module. Now finance controlling has two, okay, and material management has remaining, because in this also material management is there. So if you can just remember this one, the rest will flow automatically. This one is finance and controlling with human resource module. Now what are the integration among them? I'll tell you later on, but just go with the points. Go with the points. HR module integration with finance and controlling. One is this. Then rest is all material management. Material management with finance and controlling. Material management with production planning. Material management with sales and distribution. Okay. Material management with quality management. Material management with plant maintenance. And why they are integrating? A simple logic. Plant maintenance. Plant maintenance, guys, will require some repairs, tools, equipment, and they would request the material management department to purchase the same. So there needs to be an integration between them. The quality management is interacting with the material management because they need to check the quality of goods received, produced, sold. The sales and distribution need to check with the material management because he has to check whether the goods are available for not, for delivery or not. The production planning, obviously, again, to check whether raw materials are there or not, so that they can give an order, they can receive the products from the material management department. HR and finance controlling because of the salary calculations, the PF calculations. And then material management with finance controlling, again, due to vendor payments, material valuation, cost of the material. These are all integration of modules. So two questions. One was, after finishing up the modules, two questions. One was, what are the important points which the designer has to take into consideration while integrating all these modules? And second was the points where integration is required with other modules. So this was the question there. Fine. What is ERP? We are done with this. Benefits of ERP. Issues of ERP. There were 5 issues in that. What was that? So process issue, people issue, technological issue, implementation issue, post-implementation issue. We're done with auditing part. What are the questions you're going to ask during the ERP audit? What are the aspects you're going to cover during the audit of ERP? That aspects we have done. Then comes the modules. All the modules I've tried to touch, except 1 or 2, I've tried to touch every module, so that you can get an inbuilt conceptual clarity of how you can retain and remember those modules. And the last one was, which you have just seen, the points of integration and what are the points, important points to be considered while integrating all of them. So this is the portion of ERP which we have done with. Now comes the next portion of this chapter, which covers many small concepts. The first one is MIS, a very simple topic. More or less every topic is similar to each other in this chapter, the remaining portion of the chapter. What is MIS, sir? And what are the criteria of MIS, or what are the characteristics of the type of information contained in the MIS, or what are the benefits of MIS? So there's only one question in the MIS, and that is the 38th one. But before that, let me just explain you what is MIS. MIS is nothing, it's a system where every information is integrated, where every information is covered, and you are being reported, you are being get that information from the system. So whatever information you need, let's suppose I need a purchase report for the day, the sales reports for the month, I can get it from the MIS. So MIS provides what? MIS provides accurate, timely, meaningful information to the manager for decision making. And these reports are on-demand reports. MIS is again very user-friendly. You can generate whatever you want to generate. This MIS will give the information you want to generate. So this is management information system. It's like a reporting system, information delivery system. Now the question which comes is, what are the benefits or the criteria or the characteristics of the type of information contained in the MIS? Now MIS always runs on the concept of RATS. RATS. relevant information. MIS report need to be specific to the area they are addressing. Unnecessary information they will not be delivering. Second, the information delivered by the MIS or the reports delivered by the MIS should contain accurate information so that the user can make a decision on that basis. The MIS should provide timely information when it is needed by the manager or the executive. And the information provided by the MIS should be, in the MIS report, should be structured, because the information presented can be complicated. But the MIS should try to break, let's suppose there is a long paragraph, try to break them into chunks, smaller chunks, readable chunks, and give every chunk or sub-paragraph a heading so the user can easily grasp or understand what that particular information is informing or telling. So this is structured. So 4 aspects, 4 criteria the MIS should fulfill is, it should be relevant, it should provide relevant information, accurate, timely, and structured information. This is MIS. Next point, next topic. 2 topics are there. Data analytics, and then business intelligence, and then business reporting. 3 topics are there in fact. First, let me talk about data analytics. What is data analytics? Sir, data analytics is, from a large chunk of data, you are extracting certain relevant information with the use of some specialized tools, some specialized software with a specialized system. If I make you remind of the auditing part, if you remember, there is a chapter 6 in auditing, and that also data analytics concept is there. And data analytics concept says that when the auditor is using computerized assisted audit techniques and he's trying to tap the large amount of data and to get meaningful information out of it, that is known as data analytics. The same logic applies here. When using some specialized system and software, you are trying to examine the data sets, large amount of data, to draw conclusion about the information they contain is known as data analytics. Proving certain theories, confirming certain hypotheses, extracting some meaningful information, analyzing some logical data, analyzing some numerical data is data analytics. In short, it's a process of examining large set of data to draw conclusions about the information they contain with the help of specialized softwares, tools, and systems is known as data analytics. Now, we have several types of data analytics, but we'll be talking right now about mainly 4 data analytics. Exploratory, confirmatory, quantitative, and qualitative. We'll be talking about these 4. Now, what is exploratory data analytics? As the name suggests, you are exploring something. It's equivalent to data mining. You're exploring some pattern, some relationship within the data. That is exploratory data analytics. What is confirmatory data analytics? This is like a statistical technique, and you are confirming whether the assumption, whether the hypothesis made is correct or incorrect. So exploratory is like a detective work. You're detecting something. Confirmatory is like a work of a judge or a jury, deciding something, whether it is true or not. Similarly, quantitative and qualitative. Quantitative analytics deals with numerical data, whereas qualitative analytics deals or focuses more on the non-numerical data like text, images, sounds, videos, phrases, themes, point of views, etc. Now, the second important thing in this aspect only is this question. These are application areas. These are application areas of data analytics, and that can be a separate question for you in the exam. So remember this one also. Where this data analytics has actually applied in the current scenarios, which all organizations are using this data analytics technique. So you have taken 4 examples here wherein the data analytics is being used. The first one is the banking sector. The credit card companies are analyzing their customer spending and withdrawal pattern to see whether any money laundering is there or not, any fraudulent activity is there or not. So banks and credit card companies are using it. Second is the e-commerce companies. The marketing service providers are doing what? They are doing clickstream analysis. What is clickstream analysis? Checking that who is visiting their websites regularly? What is their page viewing pattern, the customer's page viewing pattern? What customer are regularly visiting? Which customer is regularly visiting, navigating, how is navigating in the website? So that is a clickstream analysis so that that e-commerce company can market and then make an optimum marketing strategy for that consumer. They are doing this analysis, data analytics. Third, the mobile network operators are also doing it. They're seeing which users is using more data, more GBs in a day, more internet in a day. Offer him some more plans so that he doesn't go to the rival firms. They are doing like this. The healthcare organization are using data analytics to treat their patients, to treat their disastrous patients who have some disease like cancer, severe disease. They're mining their data. They're checking their history of data, history of that particular patient's record, so that they can treat him effectively, properly, after analyzing everything. So they are using this healthcare organization. So there are 4 organizations which are using these data analytics technique. 1, the bank and the credit card companies. E-commerce company, the second one. Or any network service provider, marketing service provider. The third one is mobile network providers. Fourth one is healthcare organization. These are applications of data analytics, that the data analytics is used by these types of users right now. The next topic is business intelligence. But this topic needs only brushing because this was there in the July 21 paper. And since it was there in the July 21, we need to just brush it up soon, quickly. Chances of coming it again is less. What is business intelligence, sir? Nothing. It's just you're performing data analytics, and after performing some analysis, you have presented that information to your executives, to your managers, to the end users so that they can make proper informed business decisions. That is business intelligence. Now, what is business intelligence? Now, can it be done manually? Difficult? Yes, it is a technological driven process for analyzing the data and then presenting the actionable information. Actionable information means on those which you can take decisions, readily you can take an action. So it's a technological driven process for analyzing the data and then presenting actionable information to help the executives, managers and users to make more informed business decisions. That is business intelligence. Now, business intelligence covers 2 questions. 1, reason for business intelligence, that we will be discussing, and 1 is benefits of business intelligence, which was there in the July attempt. Business intelligence. What is business intelligence? And why we need business intelligence? What is the reason why we need business intelligence? So business intelligence was technology driven information wherein we are analyzing the data, presenting the actionable information so that the user can take informed decisions. Reason why we need it? Because this will help us in knowing our position, our capabilities. You can check that what is your position as compared to your competitor. What is your capability? What other firms are doing in the market? You'll analyze and you get an information about it. What the market is behaving like. What are the market conditions? What is the environment behaving like? Are there changes happening in the customer behavior and the spending pattern of the consumers or the customers? Once you are analyzing everything, you'll get everything which is given here. And that is the reason why you should opt for business intelligence. Why should apply this technology to analyze the data and present some information so that it will help you to know your capability, your position, your competitor's position, the market conditions in the environment, and the change in the consumer's behavior or the spending patterns. And the second question in this was benefits of business intelligence. I'll just brush this up. It helps in improving the overall performance, obviously. It will help in identifying the trends which are going in the market so that you can spot up your problems, business problems, and it will enhance obviously the customer's experience. So this is benefits of business intelligence. The next point comes business reporting. It comes from business intelligence only. basically from business intelligence only, but the topic is a bit different, a separate one. What is business reporting and why it is important? It has only one question, why this business reporting is important. So first, let me know you. What is business reporting? Sir, whenever you are presenting your information to the public, like we're publishing the annual reports, so that is a business report, also known as enterprise report. You're publishing some regular information, quarterly data, half-yearly data. You're providing information to the investors. You're providing information to the organization's decision makers that they should improve the performance because the performance is not up to the mark. So the point is, what is this reporting, business reporting? It's nothing. It's public reporting of some operating and financial data by the enterprise, or regular reporting of information, provisioning of information to the decision maker within the organization to support them in their work. So it could be internal reporting also. It could be public reporting also. Fine. And it works on the concept of data warehouse. Properly extract the data, transform and load the data, which you all are going to do in chapter number 3. The concept is similar. Business reporting. Now only one aspect we are going to discuss here, and that was importance of business reporting. What is the benefit of this business reporting? What is the importance of this business reporting? There are 5 advantages or 5 importances given. Think again logically. 3 are from the angle of stakeholders, because these reports will help whom? The stakeholder. The stakeholders will be given high quality reporting. The stakeholders will be given a proper explanation of what the organization is doing, so that their engagement could be much more with the organization. And the stakeholder will be able to assess the organizational performance with this information, and they'll be able to make proper decisions. So 3 advantages from the angle of stakeholder. First, since the organization is fully depending on stakeholders for their success, it is in interest that you should provide these business reports to them so that they can get high quality reporting. Secondly, you should try to present everything in these reports. An efficient reporting, a transparent reporting will engage your stakeholders with your organization. And it will help the stakeholders to assess the organization's performance through these reports and make proper decisions. These were from the angle of stakeholders. 2 points from the angle of organization or the management of the organization. It will help the managers to make internal decisions properly, because as I said, the business reporting can be public reporting also, or it can be internal reporting. So internal reporting will help in internal decision making. And the second important advantage of this is that it will help in properly managing the business, because proper information, high quality information will help the organization decision maker to proper make the decision, and so that the organization can be managed successfully. So these 2 are from the angle of internal employees management angle is there. So there are 5 importance of business reporting. This is a good question, because in the last attempt we have seen business intelligence. So 5 importance, 3 from the angle of stakeholders, 2 from the angle of decision makers or the managers. Okay. So this was business report. So we did, in this last portion was, we did the first part, which was data analytics, then the business intelligence, then is the business reporting. And the next one is XBRL. We'll discuss 2 questions in XBRL majorly. One is the concept of XBRL and what are the features of XBRL. Let me first explain you with the concept of XBRL. Now, what is XBRL? In a very layman angle, from the layman's angle, earlier there used to be some issues regarding what, sir? Regarding reporting of your financial aspects, your business reporting, which we discussed. The business reporting, enterprise reporting was different for every company. It was different for country to country. Let's suppose someone had to report debtors. Now one company is using debtor as a figure. It's using the terminology debtor. Another country is using sundry debtors. Another company is using debts due from the person. Another company is using account receivable. It could be very difficult for an investor, if an investor wants to, especially a foreign investor wants to compare the company's financial data. It's very difficult for them because they're not comparable. They're not having any common terminology. They're not working on a common standard. So there the need arised that there should be a common standard, a global standard, wherein all the companies can exchange, can share, can compare their business information. And for that, a not-for-profit organization, which was known as XBRL International, developed a language which is known as XBRL, Extensible Business Reporting Language. What is it? It's a freely available and a global standard for exchanging your business information, managed by XBRL International. It's an open standard for digital reporting. This XBRL is like any other languages. Your C, C++. This is also again a language for reporting the business transactions in a common framework. Currently, it's more than 50 countries are using it. These XBRLs have got taxonomies. Now, what is this taxonomies? These XBRLs have got taxonomies. Taxonomies is a dictionary of accounting terms, wherein you can choose whatever suits that particular item of financial statement. Let's take an example. As I said, if you are having a debtor and the taxonomy of that XBRL says use account receivable, so tag your debtor with the taxonomy word with the term account receivable, so that whenever any user, any investor, any analyst wants to check the account receivable of all the companies across the world, or of 5 companies or 6 companies across the globe, he can just write account receivable, and with that, whatever items are having tag of account receivable will be displayed on a screen. So that is the logic here. So in a nutshell, XBRL is a language in which reporting terms are defined authoritatively. These terms can be used to represent the content of your financial statement, as I said, so that the information can move between the organization accurately, rapidly, and digitally. It's a standard-based way to communicate and exchange your information, because if the XBRL works and every company is reporting in the XBRL format, you can easily compare and communicate your business information with any other organization, that too rapidly, quickly, and digitally. So that is the concept of XBRL, that what is XBRL all about. Clear? Fine, sir. Now let's move forward. XBRL tagging I have just told you. The purpose of XBRL, you have to do it on your own. Simple. That question is very simple. Now comes discuss the important features of XBRL. Now as I said that XBRL is having a taxonomy which is covering all the meanings of the accounting terminology, and you can use whatever suits in your financial statement, the content of your financial statement, the items of your financial statement, you can choose that definition. So the first is a very simple point. Since XBRL is a language, so it is having a clear-cut definition of every term in a book called taxonomy. So the logic says XBRL allows the creation of reusable authoritative definition called taxonomies that captures the meaning contained in all the reporting terms in the business report. So this is first. Second is again important. The second feature of XBRL is XBRL allows to create business rules that, let's suppose you don't want that information to be reported to the regulator. You don't want that information to be reported to the user till that information is not yet finalized by you. So while it is in draft, that report is in draft, you are preparing that report in XBRL format. You don't want that report to be published before you finalize that report. So you can impose, you can set some constraint, you can set the rules in that that this information need not be reported till I approve this information. So the second feature of XBRL is XBRL allows to create business rules that can constrain what can be reported and what cannot be reported. Rules can be logical also, rule can be mathematical also. And these rules will help us ensuring that poor quality information is not sent to the regulator. In case any questionable information is there, that particular rule will create a flag, will create a highlight on that information so that the user can quickly take an action, so that the developer can quickly take an action on it. So this is the second feature. The third one is quite easy. This XBRL has a multilingual support. A report prepared in one language can be displayed in whatever language you want. So it has a multilingual support. And fourth, nowadays, this particular XBRL is supported by a wide variety of software vendors also. Large, small, every software vendor is supporting this XBRL, which allows a very wide range of stakeholders to work with this XBRL standard. So there are four basic features of XBRL. The first one, it has a clear, authoritative definitions in the taxonomies, and you can put those words, you can tag those words with the content of your financial statement. Second, XBRL has allowed us to create business rules so that poor quality information can be stopped from being sent to the regulator. And in case of any questionable information is there, you can flag or highlight those information. Third, XBRL has allowed multilingual support in as many languages as necessary. So it is possible to display a range of reports in different languages other than the one from which in which it was created. And the fourth is many software vendors are now supporting this language, so the stakeholders can rely on this XBRL. So these are four features of XBRL. Fine. Okay. Coming on to the last topic of this chapter. What are the pros and cons of having a single software for accounting and tax compliance or having a separate software for tax compliance? Now the question is, you have an accounting software and you want to merge the accounting software or the taxation part also in the accounting software, so that in a single software you can get accounting and compliance part, taxation part both. The second option is keep a separate software for tax compliance. You have an accounting software, you don't want to merge the tax compliance software in that software itself. You keep a separate tax compliance software. So what are the pros and cons of that? So it is given in the tabular manner. I'll explain one by one every one. And again, a logical and a very easy topic, but an important topic. First, easy to operate, ease of software operation. Now, which would be easy? The merged one or a separate one? Sir, the merged one would be less easy to operate, because in that accounting and tax both have integrated. Everything is connected. And in that case, making a change at any one place, be it in the accounting part or be it in the taxation part, it will affect the other one also. It is not that easy to operate. In the tax compliance, where only tax compliance software is separately there and accounting part is separate, there it would be more easy to operate because it is used for only that single purpose only. So complications would be less and comfort would be more. This is the first one. Second is features and facility. Now, since this is a merged software, so it's not an exclusive software for tax compliance, then the chances of the features would be less. The tax compliance features would be less in the merged software. But when there is an exclusive software for tax compliance, naturally more features and facilities would exist in that system. Third one, time and effort required. Time and effort required in the merged software will be less, because there is no need to transfer the data from one software to another one. Whereas since in the second phase, where the accounting software is separate and tax compliance software is separate, you need to shift the transaction from one place to another. So time and effort would be more in that. Next comes accuracy. Again on the same logic, since there is no need to transfer the data is there in the single system, so there would be more accuracy. In the other case, where there are two separate software, there's a need to move the system, move the data. Reconciliation need to be done because there is a chance of data mismatch. So you need to take more efforts there. Accuracy, chances a bit less. And the last point, cost. If you're merging the compliance software, you're customizing your accounting software to get it merged with the compliance software, the cost would be more as compared to buying a separate tax compliance software. So cost would be more. In the second case, where you're buying only the tax compliance software, since that is for that specific purpose, there's no need to customize, no complications are there. So cost would also be less there. So these are the basis on which we can decide the pros and cons also. If the differences are asked, we can write difference also. And if the pros and cons are asked, we can write pros and cons also of having a separate software or having a merged software. So this is where we end our chapter 2 revision, summary of every topic I have covered in this chapter. But yes, those topics which are not covered by me in this revision lecture needs to be dealt by you. You cannot skip it. Needs to be dealt by. But we have tried in this chapter to cover maximum thing we can, because we need last moment revisions, and that is the purpose of this revision lecture. 3 aspects of this chapter, but I forget this chapter into 3 parts. The first one is the introductory part, the master, non-masters. The second one was ERP. ERP had 2 parts. One was the basic one, advantages, risks, auditing part. And then comes the modular part. All the modules were there, the features were there, the processes were there. We have discussed everything in detail with the logics. The third version was the other parts, the third part, which comprises of MIS, business intelligence, data analytics, business reporting, and the XBRL. And this one was the last question. So this is from our side. Thank you for watching this lecture. Be prepared for the further lectures. That's it for the November 21 revision lecture EIS. Thank you.